Hello, everyone, and welcome to People Always Ask. Now, last time that I did any conversation like this, it was right after the riots started around the George Floyd protests. The reason that I'm choosing to do a People Always Ask around this is not too separate. Today's topic is how to deal with rage. Breonna Taylor's verdict has come out. A lot of people are experiencing rage. The famous quote goes, to be relatively conscious in America and Black is to be in a rage almost all of the time, right? And so today we're going to talk about rage as a feeling, as an energy, as a meaning, and what to do with it, how to transform it, how to sort of use that emotion in some sort of way. Because there's a lot of different messages out there about what rage is, but this is not a new topic. In fact, in the 1960s, there's a famous Black psychiatrist by the name of William H. Greer who wrote a whole entire book with another Black psychiatrist on Black rage as a phenomena, as an extension of living in almost a constant state of hopelessness, and then being triggered in moments about the devaluation of your life, your family, your property, and everything that is related to having land and body rights in this country. So Breonna Taylor fits right in with that legacy, right? That in fact, America is reminding us once again that somehow in this verdict, people's property is more important than Black people's lives. And it is enraging folks, understandably so. It's an understandable reaction. And so today we're talking about what to do with rage. And for a lot of people, this is not an emotion that just comes up when they hear about verdicts. This is something that can come up in their everyday life. This is things that can come up around generational trauma, around individual or institutional trauma. Rage is a very protective warrior kind of emotion. And so the view that we're going to take, which is from a lot of ancient principles, but the most common one you can find is online if you looked up Taoism. The belief is that emotions are information or energy. And so the way we're going to be talking about rage today is more about rage as energy and information and how to actually use that. Because I think that there is a dismissal in telling people to release their rage and to let it go and to get over it. That sort of implies that the rage wasn't there for a reason, that it wasn't signaling a huge problem to begin with. And almost always, if we're experiencing rage, we're also experiencing something else, because rage is actually secondary to feeling more vulnerable. So if we're talking about what comes first, we're also talking about another negative emotion that probably isn't as empowered, that probably has a little bit less confidence. And so in some ways, we want to listen to rage and hold on to rage because rage has confidence, rage feels entitled, rage thinks things need to change. And so if that is what rage is telling us, if it's that information that's coming up when we feel rage, then we need to do something with that energy. And so the first thing that we really got to talk about is that a lot of people relate to negative emotions, rage in particular, in ways that are not particularly helpful. And so if you find yourself in a situation where you actually feel like it is a bad thing just to have a negative emotion, you're in good company. A lot of people think that you're not supposed to feel bad. And that's the thing, is we're looking at this through the Taoist view, which is that your emotions are energy, they're information. There's nothing that you can do about the energy that's coming through your body, right? Except for deal with it, sit with it, and recognize what the information is that's coming from this negative emotion. If your relationship with negative emotions is you're not supposed to have them at all, one, that reinforces a really imperialist, white supremacist view of how your body is supposed to function. You don't only work in ways that serve people around you. The way that you operate is also for your survival, for your thriving, for your spirit. So negative emotion and rage have to be looked at as information. If looking at them as somehow brokenness or something bad, right? And so a lot of Black men and boys and a lot of people who experience a lot of rage in the school system, what will end up happening is the message around that rage will be that something's wrong with you. You need to go manage that. You need to go figure that out, you are defective. A lot of us have a really weird relationship with negative emotions, and we'll be trying to find meditations and self-help courses and all sorts of things to help us let go of negative emotion. instead of sitting with it and really trying to commune with the energy of what's happening in our body and just gain wisdom from what it is that we're feeling, we go into places that are closer to repression and suppression, right? Which are actually two separate things, but they're very, very common things to do with rage. So some of the things you might want to start asking yourself is, when I feel annoyed, irritated, or enraged, what is my response to myself? Do I punish myself? Do I get mad at myself for having that feeling? Do I sit with it? Do I give it any sort of validation? Also, what is my response to seeing negative emotion and rage in other people? Because that's going to tell you a lot about what your automatic thoughts are around what negative emotions are for. A lot of us actually think that there is no purpose, and that in and of itself becomes destructive, because then we're busy trying to fix ourselves because we think something's wrong with us for not feeling good all the time. And there is no religion in this world, there's no spirituality in this world that is going to make you feel good all the time. You might feel content, you might feel grounded, present, but good is actually not even a realistic goal. So anything that sells us happiness all the time, no negative feelings, cut out every single trigger that you ever have, that's not real. And in fact, that's probably not even safe, because a lot of negative emotions, a lot of rage is protective. And so if we have those feelings, they're there for a reason. If we don't know the reason, we're going to spend a lot of time telling ourselves that they shouldn't exist, but that doesn't change the fact that they are there for a reason. There is wisdom in our body, and body wisdom is passed down generationally, literally, and it's gained over the course of your whole entire life. So when you have an automatic feeling about something, it means something. Not only does it mean something about what might have happened to you, it means something about what might have happened to your family generationally. For example, I have clients whom their grandparents, their great-grandparents, them and their parents have all experienced abuse, neglect, emotional suppression, and anger and rage within their family unit, which also comes from anger and rage from places like wars and racism and segregation, right? And so when we're talking about layers of healing, rage has its place. And if it's not dealt with, it is still expressed. It is still felt in the body. And so that's why we really have to examine, when we feel these negative things that will come up, what is our relationship with them? Because if we're shaming ourselves for them, if we're telling ourselves that they're not okay, we're already working backwards. That's not the helpful emotional route to go. So the first step of this is to really get away from the first two things, which is repression, right? Because if we think about repressed rage, it does one thing and that's it. It goes somewhere else and that's inward. So it leads to pain, anxiety, depression. Actually, there's a book by, I can't remember what his last name is. I think his last name is Sloan, a medical doctor who talks about the relationship between chronic stress, anger, and repressed emotions and pain, physical pain. That most back pain, a whole huge amount is his theory, is actually linked to repressed rage. And then if we don't have physical pain, which many of us do, we have headaches, backaches, sickness, all sorts of things, we have anxiety and we have depression. Because when we turn that rage inwards, it turns into self-criticism. But the energy, if we go back to the original thing, the energy of the rage is still there. And who are we going to rage at? Are we going to rage at ourselves? Or are we going to beat ourselves up and tell ourselves something's wrong with us, why we feel this in this world? Or are we going to read that feeling and that information differently, right? And so repression tells us you should push this feeling down until you don't even feel it anymore. And some of us don't even think about this, right? It's such an unconscious thing because for our whole lives, the message that we've gotten is, you shouldn't feel that feeling. There's no use in you feeling that feeling. And that powerlessness gets us into a place where we actually push the feeling down pretty automatically, and then it comes out in other ways. And so if you're repressing the feeling, what tends to happen is that you tend to kind of get passive aggressive, that there's other places that it can come out. There's still rage, there's still some energy going on in you that's not good. And instead of taking it and having some conscious relationship with it, it's in you and it's coming out in ways that are either internalized self messages that don't feel good, or passive aggression at other people because you're feeling resentful, angry, irritated, and on edge. So the other part of this, right, is suppression, which is the attempt to overpower your rage and escape it. And so sometimes people would do this with trying to be happy, only think positive thoughts, that kind of stuff. I'm going to dismiss it. But suppression is equal to you denying the validity of what you're feeling. If you think that for some reason your rage is inappropriate and you're going to try to run away from yourself, I hate that I feel this, so I'm going to try to use substances. I'm going to try to go on an acid trip to get over this. I'm going to try to, have sex and sort of get over into some other place, right? Overpowering and escaping your feelings, trying to suppress your anger through doing other stuff to kind of mask it, that can be a very dangerous road. And in fact, a lot of us can probably imagine that we or other people in our lives have at some point, in an attempt to suppress what we know we're feeling, doing other things to kind of cover it up. Whatever that thing is, whatever feels better. Right. And so some of the other ways that we might go about this, right, are expression, right? You can talk about it. Expressing your rage is a good thing, right? But ideally, just expressing it to let it go is also not what we're trying to do. So what are we trying to do, Chantelle? Why you keep talking about all this stuff we're not trying to do? So let's talk about what we are going to do, right? Communing with and transmuting rage. And so let's take one part at a time. Communing, right, which means to sit with and also to sit within community, right? So not just alone, but also with either spiritual guides or mentors or people in your community or ancestors that you connect to, or through tarot and all sorts of dream interpretations. There's a lot of ways that you can sit with the information that your body is giving you, right? And so what it requires is for us to go through a little bit of a process. Now, transmuting is after we sit with the rage, turning it into something. And I don't mean just metaphorically, because I think sometimes people get caught up in this idea that it's like, it's just enough for you to feel better. I mean, literally turning it into something, action, something actionable that feels like it's going to make you feel more empowered, right? And so if we're going to talk about rage, the way we have to think about it is that it is giving you a warning bell. Something is actually wrong here. All right. And Audre Lorde wrote a whole piece on Black women in stress and Black women in anger and how they come hand in hand. Because even though anger may not seem like a great emotion, it is protective and it is automatic. Right. And so in order to really deal with it, we have to really address it, because if we don't, not only does it lead to pain, it can lead to liver issues, it can lead to high blood pressure, it can lead to heart issues, it can lead to all sorts of back and spinal issues. And so we want to make sure that everything is functioning 100%. And chronic stress, unreleased, unaddressed, and unempowered is one of those things that will kill us. It's not about us just taking this and doing for others. This is about radically sitting with yourself and going, there's something that I feel that I need and that I'm entitled to get, because that's actually what rage is telling you. It's something that needs to happen that is radically not okay, and that you feel that something needs to be addressed for the sake of you and your livelihood and your survival and what you care about. Now, for Black people, that is a story that gets repeated a lot. For Indigenous people, that's a story that gets repeated a lot. For people who are living in poverty in America, that's a story that gets repeated a lot. And so when you sit with rage and systems and things that are going on, a lot of that is sending the message that there is a problem. And when people dismiss that there is a problem, it adds to the rage, because the bigger problem than that is that there's no means for us to talk about it. There's no way for us to address it. There isn't a system designed to address this problem that I can feel in my body, right? That if I'm a Black woman going into the medical system, even as Serena Williams, that I got to worry about my life. If I feel rage about that, that is a warning bell that medical system actually needs to be radically changed, if not deconstructed and rebuilt altogether, right? And so we need to go from a place of me just noticing that I feel rage to me taking that and getting some information from that. And step one is always going to be to pause and find your center. You cannot become your rage. You have to be able to notice it. You have to be able to feel it, but to become it, to let you be consumed by it, is to say that there is no you beyond this feeling, when really there is a sort of centered spiritual you that exists that is not enraged, right? There's a part of you that would be there if the rage didn't need to come out to protect it. And that is vulnerable, true, passionate, curious, loving you. So when we find center, what we're looking to do is to find clean, quiet space where we can sit with ourselves and be still. Stillness can be uncomfortable. And for a lot of us, stillness is uncomfortable. And so what we start with for a lot of people is just focusing in on the breath and on the experience of the sensations in your body. Feelings are not just thoughts. For those of us who don't have a great relationship with our feelings in our body, we don't tend to realize that they really are energy, that it really is a feeling, a literal sensation that can happen. So the first thing we do with our rage is we find a safe place to sit with it, to feel it, to recognize what's even there. And I don't mean you have to write it in a journal. I don't mean you have to say it to anybody. I mean you have to be able to sit with your body, notice what's in it. And we can start right now. Sit with yourself for a second, guys. Notice all of what is there. So just breathe into your stomach, right? Find your center. Find a seat to sit on. Find somewhere to be. Find a place where you think you can actually see your rage and yourself at the same time, because this is some time for some observation. So the next step is to tune into your body, right? Once we've found this space, once we are taking our breaths, once we're centered enough to notice what's going on, and that's all we're asking is for you to notice in that first step. Pause and notice. There's anger here. We don't need to release it on anybody just now, right? Because that can turn into pain, that can turn into mistakes, that can turn into regrets. What we want to do is start with us. Honor that if you're feeling rage, there is information and energy in your body that you need to sit with. And the second part of this is tuning into what's there. Usually it's not just rage. Sometimes it's rage and sadness and pain and loss and grief. And it's all of those things. And we want to scream and we want to cry and we want to be furious at the world. And we want to hide and we want to curl up in a ball. And so we have to tune into our body and notice each part of that. Where do you actually notice that? And as you're doing this, right, what's going to be automatic is you're going to tell yourself what you shouldn't be feeling, what should be there, what you feel about that. But relax your judgment. Your rage is there for a reason. It is simply information and energy. When you are sitting with your spirit, when you are sitting with that rage, and all the other pain that precedes the rage, because this is secondary. The rage is protective. I want you to see the rage as the warrior in you trying to protect you, that there's other emotions there. Notice them, because all of them are information. All of them are telling you something about what's going on. And when you experience rage, the relaxing of the judgment is something that's going to be necessary to figure out what's doing it. Now, some of us might know, okay, this Breonna Taylor thing is another thing. It's getting me to a place where I feel out of control. I feel enraged. I feel like I want to escape. Relax the judgment. You're not the only one who feels that way. And in fact, always give yourself credit to think that if something is enraging you because of who you are as a human being, that maybe it means it might be making other people feel that very same way. Disempowered, hurt, scared, powerless, frustrated, and enraged, right? If that's the combination that I sit with, then I got to relax my judgment and say, this is what I'm feeling. And guess what? I'm feeling it for a reason. What does that tell us? If I'm feeling rage and I'm feeling powerless and I'm feeling pain, what does that tell us, right? Allow the energy to flow. When your energy is flowing, what you might notice is it brings up memories. It brings up thoughts, it brings up people, it brings up other experiences in your life. I want you to notice when you're sitting with the energy and not judging yourself and just allowing it to flow. What parts of this are a memory for me? What parts of this are a memory for my people? And what parts of this are going on right here, right now that I need to actually address? If this rage is something that is telling me about the situation, what is it telling me? What is the message of this feeling in my body? Let me sit with it and allow the energy to flow and tell me two things. One, what does it mean about me that I feel this way? Is it because of who I am, what I've been through? What does it mean about me that I have this rage, right? Doesn't mean that it has to be a judgment. It's just a question. What about your life contributes to you feeling this way? It's fair. It's a fair feeling, right? It's just information and energy. What contributes to it? The other part is, right, now that I've got this feeling, what do I do about it? Because doing something with your rage is where this turns from just sitting with it and creating meaning into something that's a little bit different, that we're transforming this pain into some sort of power, turning this rage into some sort of actual war that you can fight and that you can be a part of, that you can turn into a legitimate concern. And this is where people sometimes stray, and this is a very important step, to sit alone with no tools about how it is that you're going to get out of your feeling of disempowerment and struggle with the system, to say, hey, listen, this rage means that this system is fucked up, people are unsafe, there's all sorts of issues going on where if I walk into a hospital, if I go into a car, if I take my children to school, if I even sleep in bed with my boyfriend, that I'm not safe in this country. That's what that alarm bell means, that that's not okay, and that for generations I've been trying to suppress it. But I'm feeling not only vulnerable, but I'm feeling enraged by the lack of protection. So now we've got to share that message. That's information that's not nothing. That's valuable information. So sit with yourself and think about, well, what can I do with what I have to make that a problem? If I'm going to sit with my ancestors and try to figure out what do we have generationally, what does this mean for me? What does that next step mean for me, right? Or I'm going to talk to mentors in my community or my village of people who care about me and see me. And I'm going to go, this is what I'm feeling. And I think this is what it means. And how do we organize ourselves appropriately to really take this rage and turn it into a policy, turn it into a problem, turn it into a coup, whatever we need to turn it into. Because it's not just rage, it's information. And if all of us have all this information that this alarm bell is going off, we can do more than just feel it and repress it and release it and tell each other about it. We need to do more than that about it, because what our rage is telling us is that something needs to be done for our survival. This is not okay. It's the same rage that comes out in children who are unprotected by their parents. And you may not have seen this in any family before, but trust me when I say, because I've worked with a lot of families with a lot of hurt, that if somebody is unprotected by the person who's put in place to protect them, the rage and fury that comes that person's way is unmatched. You wouldn't believe it. And this, our country, our systems, our places put in place to protect us do not. We have what's considered a trauma happening every single time that we trust them to, and they slip up. And so that's a problem. That needs to be repaired. There's a reason for that rage. And just like with a child who's been neglected by a parent who has not protected them, there actually is a route towards rebuilding that trust. And it's not on the person who wasn't protected. It isn't. We've got demands, we've got needs, just like people who are unprotected and vulnerable and trusted other people to do the job. If I'm saying that you have the power to make choices and control things, then what I'm also saying is I need to know for a fact that you're going to do the thing that you're supposed to do in that role, which is protect me. Otherwise, I'm entitled to my rage because it protects me, right? If I don't have this rage and I trust you, then what happens to me? I die, I get killed, I go missing, I get hurt, my children get a poor education, I feel bad about myself, I'm injected with racism, I'm injected with sexism. That sort of stuff is not okay. And either it's going to turn into anxiety, depression, and this desire to please everybody who did not protect you in the first place, or you're going to stick with the rage and tell them that we need to actually do something about this, because not only do I feel it, I deserve to feel it. Until I feel that the issue is resolved, then it's not, right? That there's a lot of things that are just that simple. That if we really know in our hearts that the rage that's coming up isn't a bell that's sounding, that when we see people in the streets, what we should read it as is information that the energy in this country is that Black people and people of color and people who stand next to them as allies do not feel protected, do not feel seen, do not feel heard, that's not okay. And so when we sit with ourselves and we say, listen, we're entitled to more. And not only are we entitled to more, we're about to ask for it, get it, and figure out what that looks like. That might sound scary, but that's what sitting with your rage and making it real and making it legitimate and validating that there's information coming from what your body is telling you looks like. It's not being reckless. It's not hurting people that you love because you feel out of control. That's one way to do it, but we're not just asking you to release your anger. We're asking you to commune with your anger, to sit with it, to tell yourself, what does this mean? And to make it into something that makes you feel like you actually have power to fix what is wrong, what the sounding of the alarm is about. And so at the end of this, right, what you need to be able to say is that, and as the sirens go off, right? So at the end of this process, what you need to be able to do for yourself, for everybody who's involved, is to be able to say, when I felt that, that was because this was what was going on, right? And this is, if it's still going on, then there's still a part of me that sits with that protective energy of, try me, because I don't trust you with my survival. I will be furious if you mess with my livelihood and my family and my values again. That is actually a fair reaction to you being threatened, which, let's say that the Breonna Taylor outcome, it makes a lot of women and a lot of Black people feel like they don't matter. And that's not safe. And in a system where Black women are more likely to die in the hospital than at home with a lot of childbirths, it's not crazy that a lot of people are getting triggered right now. And so what comes at the end of this, when you sat with your energy, when you let it pass, when you commune with it and really try to get it out in some sort of way that feels healthy, right? Let me express it this way and do this action. That combination for you is going to lead you to something that's more like your authentic self, where you get to be empowered even in the parts of you that feel dark and heavy and scared, right? Because what your rage is protecting is your fear, is your powerlessness, is your sense that maybe you can't protect yourself. And so if that's what if your rage is worried about, if that's the energy and information that is giving you, you need to liberate yourself by giving it permission to have space, to be real, and for yourself to be real with what it means, right? And so the last part of this is to experience liberated energy, which means that you feel what you feel and the energy can go out and it can have a place to go and it can have a purpose to be, and you can sit with it. And it's not about shoving it down and it not going anywhere and getting stuck. Because a lot of people think that what they should do with their anger is sweep it under the rug somewhere until, it's a good time to bring it up again. When in reality, if it was signaling a problem, it means you need to address something. And if we're going to live in a liberated reality where your feelings get to be information that's valid, then when you feel something, rather than telling yourself you're bad for having rage, something's wrong with you for being so angry, why you got this anger problem, really sit with yourself and commune with the feeling and with others and the meaning of what that energy is about. Because once you have a story and a power and a real process for how you're going to take your rage from a place of, I feel out of control and rageful, to I'm communing with this and understand this, and I feel in control, and I can use this rage as power, and I can use this rage as policy creation, and I can use this rage as organization of what needs to happen next, because I know where the problem is, because it feels to me like there's a problem in my body, and my body doesn't tell me things for no reason, right? That's liberation. That's being connected to both your feeling and the validity behind the feeling, without the self-doubt, self-criticism, anxiety, depression. It's moving through it. And until we find safe ways to both go through the uncontrolled part of this, where it just feels and it hurts and it's scary, we can't even move into the next part, which is sharing the information we gain from sitting with ourselves with others in our community, in a safe way, in planning, in fighting. And then when we do that, moving into a place where there is a space for what we felt intuitively when things like Breonna Taylor's outcome in this court case happened, right? Is that we know what it means that we have rage and we know where to go with it. And until then, it sort of reinforces America's lie that, You're just angry, and it's a you thing. And that's never really a great lesson, right, y'all? So, I mean, the biggest thing here is to not suppress, not just express, but to commune and to transform or transmute that negative energy. And so for now, that's the tip of the iceberg. What you do to invite stillness into your life so you can sit with your rage is up to you. If you want to do breathing, if you want to sit by an ocean, if you want to float on water while you feel it, if you want to scream into a pillow while you feel it, if you want to run while you feel it, do whatever you need to, because energy is energy and it needs to be released. Pushing it in words is never, never, never a helpful thing. Acknowledging it, inviting it in, really sitting with it and getting some meaning from it, right? That supports our biggest idea that tuning into your body will actually give you more wisdom through not only the wisdom that's in your thoughts, but also in your intuition, also in your spiritual knowing, also in your ancestral knowing, that a lot of those things you cannot do without really consciously sitting with the feeling and giving yourself permission to say, well, this is here for a reason. This ain't just me being a problem, right? That's the message that they want you to think, but that's not how your body works. Your body just remembers and is keeping score. That's why that book is called Body Keeps Score. So let's pull a card just for a takeaway lesson today. I'm shuffling. This is the perfect card to pull, actually. This is the Light Strength card. Disregard the white woman on the card. You know, it could be any of us. That's just a representation. My melanated deck is delayed. Regardless, the Strength card is one that is really about a card of balance, self-acceptance, and using your strength, right? And rage, as we're talking about here, is simply your strength, your energy, how you relate to it, how you talk to yourself about it. Now, that is an individual journey, and you can struggle with that, or you can use it. And so the takeaways of a strength card that we're pulling here at the end of this rage. Loving myself, lion warts and all, gives me the strength to be brave and forceful. So this is about self-love, emotional strength, mental courage, inner tranquility, right? Not inner unrest, but inner tranquility, compassion and tolerance. So from a psychological perspective, it means we're talking about our base instincts, right? Spontaneous reactions, phobias, frights, fears. So if unchecked, they dominate and demand and take over our whole personality. And then if they're repressed, the personality is weak, spineless, right? And that's not what we want to do with rage. And this card is saying that that's a dangerous thing to do with our strength, to push it down and then to become spineless and not know what we're standing on anymore because we're ashamed of it. And so this represents pure, serene, higher knowledge, right? Higher connection to our being that understands that you can subdue your rage or your lion or your inner sort of uncontrolled strength with love and compassion. And this is self-love and compassion, right? And so it seems that we have to tame our rage, right? Not fight it, not repress it, not push it away, and deal with the full falling out of what this is really about. That's what this card is asking us to do. So it's asking you to overcome just being impulsive about your reaction. It's asking you to moderate your excesses, to be holistic, to be gentle with yourself when you feel this, and that you should love and respect yourself, but also give in your community and those who deserve it, love and respect to those around you, right? Balancing your strength, having the courage of your convictions, and taking responsibility for your actions, right? This is the triumph of the energy of love within that rage, to overcome the energy of hate and to be controlled and thoughtful and useful, right? That if we can use our strength, it becomes courage. If we can use our rage, it becomes courage. It becomes a warrior spirit. It becomes something that can work in the service of us and others to defend ourselves and to get what we need. When it's unregulated, the exact opposite happens. We beat ourselves up. And instead of accepting our dark parts and really sitting with them and understanding what they mean, we go into places where it looks more like self-criticism and darkness and unhappiness and hopelessness, or worrying about being good enough, right? So this card asks us to keep it in balance, to see both our strength and its value and our ability to tame, see, and use it in ways that are constructive and helpful. And actually, that if we ignore it, if we repress it, we're harming ourselves. And so for now, try to tame your inner lion and notice what it's feeling. Give it voice, give it power, be courageous. But first, sit with yourself and love yourself and accept without judgment whatever it is you are feeling as information and energy about what you need to do next. All right, y'all. So until next time, be in tune with your bodies, trust your inner knowing, and please disconnect from anything that is making it worse if you're already experiencing the rage, and take your time to sit with yourself, love yourself, and understand what it is that the messages are that your rage is trying to send you. Then come back to your community, share your experience, and get into action around making changes that feel like they need to happen for you to settle that rage, for you to really feel like things are safer in here. So I will see you next time on People Always Ask, and hopefully on a better note, we'll have used our rage to doing something to the end of making a change that needs to happen so that people in this country can actually feel like it's their country and that they're being protected by the people who claim to protect them. That's what my rage means. Is don't have me out here saying I trust somebody that I know I shouldn't trust. And I give you 2 chances, and next thing you know, I'm traumatized. I'm left out, right? And so use what you can to create the world that you really, really deserve. You are entitled to healing. You are entitled to listening to the alarms that go off for you and responding to them. We don't need the whole firing squad to come out if it's only a smoke alarm, right? So sit with yourself first and figure out what part of this is my history, what part of this is valid, and what do I need to kind of take out of here and turn into action? What do I need to be courageous about it and make sure that there's voice and truth in what's going on that I'm experiencing in my body? It's way too common, guys. So hopefully we won't have to do this again. But if you are, this little episode is always going to be sitting here for you. And hopefully you can figure out spiritually what works for you to sit with yourself and really make the most out of what you need. I'll catch you next time.